Get her out of here. This boardroom isn't for assistants. The words cracked through the glass walls of the Skyline Tower like a slap. Heads turned. Laughter, soft, sharp, poisonous, rippled down the long mahogany table. Ava Monroe didn't move. She stood at the far end of the conference room, framed by the Manhattan skyline glittering behind her. Her navy suit fit perfectly, the gold pin on her lapel bearing the name of her company, Monroe Dynamics, gleamed under the ceiling lights. But at that moment, no one cared who she was. To them, she was just another black woman standing where she didn't belong. The man who'd spoken, Carter Whitmore, leaned back in his chair, his cufflinks flashing. "We said this meeting is for shareholders, not support staff," he added, smirking. His tone wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of someone used to owning the air around him. No one corrected him. Not even the others on the board. 10 men in tailored suits, a few women glancing away as if silence could save them from discomfort. The conference assistant froze at the door, eyes darting between them, unsure what to do. Ava finally spoke. "I am the shareholder," she said, voice calm, steady. For a beat, silence hung heavy. Then came the chuckles. "Oh, really?" Carter said, crossing his legs. "That's cute." The sting of those words landed deep, but Ava's face didn't flinch. Years in this world had taught her that sometimes silence is sharper than anger. She glanced at the company logo projected on the screen, Whitmore Technologies, the same brand that had spent years acquiring smaller firms like hers. The irony was almost poetic. Today's agenda was to finalize a deal that would merge the two companies under Whitmore's name. Or so they thought. Miss Monroe said, Evelyn Price, the only other woman at the table, her voice carefully neutral. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion privately." Ava nodded slowly, eyes still locked on Carter. "Of course," she said softly. "After all, this room should feel comfortable." The words were polite. The look in her eyes wasn't. Carter laughed again, tipping his espresso cup toward her. "See, that's the problem with trying to play in the big leagues. You people get one seat at the table and suddenly think you run the game." A few heads dropped. Someone coughed. The assistant near the door looked like she wanted to disappear. Ava turned to the window, watching the reflection of the boardroom shimmer against the skyscrapers beyond. She thought of her grandmother in Atlanta, who'd cleaned offices like this for 40 years, who used to say, "They may own the building, but they can't own your dignity." She turned back, calm again. "You're right," she said. "This building does belong to people like you." Carter smirked. "Glad you understand." Ava set her tablet on the table. Her thumb tapped twice on the screen. The massive digital display behind her blinked. For a second, the Whitmore logo vanished. Then slowly, the letters shifted. Monroe Dynamics Incorporated Majority Stakeholder Acquisition confirmed. The room froze. "What is this?" Carter demanded, rising from his chair. Ava met his glare, her tone even. "A change of ownership filing. Effective this morning." Evelyn gasped. You bought us out." "Technically, Ava said your board voted to merge last quarter. You just didn't read the fine print. The new parent company isn't Whitmore Technologies." She paused. "It's me." Outside traffic hummed far below, oblivious. Inside, no one breathed. Carter's smirk dissolved. "That's impossible." Ava's phone vibrated once. A message flashed, "Transfer complete." She picked it up, turned to the room, and smiled a quiet, measured smile that said everything her pride never would. "You said this boardroom wasn't for assistants," she said, gathering her notes. "Good news. It's for owners now." She walked out, heels clicking against the marble floor, leaving a silence so heavy it bent the air. In that silence, every person in that room felt the echo of what they'd just witnessed. Not rage, not revenge, but something colder, justice delivered with grace. And for every black viewer watching this unfold online later, the clip already trending, the comments flooding in, the feeling was the same. We've been there. And that's how it feels when dignity wins. Look at her face. She's really trying not to cry. The whisper came from the end of the table, low, but loud enough to slice through the hum of the room. A few muffled laughs followed that brand of laughter that's half amusement, half cruelty, the sound of people who know the power they hold and enjoy using it. Ava Monroe didn't blink. She sat still, her hand resting on the tablet that now displayed financial data she'd memorized days ago. The meeting had resumed, at least on paper, but no one was listening to the quarterly report. Everyone was watching her. The boardroom on the 59th floor of Skyline Tower overlooked lower Manhattan floor-to-ceiling glass, 12 chairs that probably cost more than a semester at Howard, a mahogany table polished to mirror perfection. It was supposed to be neutral ground, a space for deals and numbers, but to Ava it suddenly felt like a courtroom. Carter Whitmore leaned back, stretching his arms with casual arrogance. "Let's be clear," he said, his voice dripping with the same tone he'd used earlier. "The merger's only on the table if we can be sure of cultural fit. We have a certain image to maintain." Evelyn Price gave a small, uneasy smile, meaning what exactly she asked, even though everyone already knew. "Meaning professionalism," Carter replied, looking straight at Ava. "The right tone, the right look, the right people." He didn't have to say more. The message was coded, but clear. Ava's pulse thudded in her ears, but her expression stayed composed. Years of boardrooms, investor dinners, and backhanded compliments had built that composure into armor. Still, she could feel the old anger stirring beneath the surface, the one her grandmother had warned her about. "Don't let them see you lose your peace, baby. Let your peace make them uncomfortable." She took a slow breath. "Cultural fit," she repeated softly, tilting her head. That's an interesting phrase coming from a company that just lost a diversity lawsuit. The silence that followed was sharp enough to draw blood. Evelyn's eyes widened. A few board members shifted in their seats. Carter's jaw tightened. "Watch your tone, Ms. Monroe," he said, voice low now. Ava smiled faintly. "You were worried about tone, right? I'm just making sure I use the right one." The tension cracked into the air like static. Outside, the sky had darkened, clouds stacking against the glass. Inside, every inch of the room seemed to close in tighter. A storm, brewing in silence. Then Carter leaned forward, voice colder than before. "You know what the problem is, Ava. People like you always think being smart is the same as being powerful." "People like me," Ava repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Carter's smirk returned. "Yes, the kind who walk into rooms built by others and start acting like they own them." The irony almost made her laugh. Almost. But she didn't. She sat back, folded her hands, and let the words hang there. Evelyn spoke up, trying to steer the meeting back to business. But the damage was done. The boardroom wasn't a workspace anymore. It was a battlefield drawn along invisible lines. Ava could feel the weight of history pressing on her shoulders, the weight every black professional in a white space knows too well. The pressure to smile, to stay calm, to prove yourself twice over for half the respect. Carter closed his laptop. "This meeting's over. We'll revisit the proposal once the board has reviewed all terms without unnecessary drama." He stood straightening his jacket, expecting everyone to follow. But Ava stayed seated. Her voice came low, almost conversational. "Funny thing about drama," she said, "it usually starts when someone mistakes their privilege for power." He turned, his face tightening. "Excuse me?" She stood, her heels quiet against the marble floor. "You heard me," she said, meeting his gaze evenly. "You keep talking about ownership, but you're so busy protecting your seat that you didn't notice someone just pulled the table from under you?" Evelyn looked at her sharply. "Ava, what are you?" But Ava didn't answer. She gathered her files, her phone lighting up in her hand with a new notification. A small smile flickered across her lips as she read it. "Just business," she said, turning toward the door. Carter called after her. "You can't walk out on this. We're not done." Ava paused at the doorway, her reflection catching in the glass, the skyline glowing behind her like a silent witness. "Oh, I'm done," she said. "You just don't know it yet." The door shut quietly behind her, but The echo it left behind was thunderous. For the next 30 seconds, no one spoke. Not Carter, not Evelyn, not the assistant standing frozen with her notepad halfway lifted. The boardroom felt colder now, emptier, like the power had shifted, though no one could explain how. Miles away, the email Ava had just sent hit the inboxes of every investor on record, the official announcement of Monroe Dynamics controlling acquisition, the same deal Carter thought he was chairing. She stepped into the elevator, exhaling for the first time all morning. Her phone buzzed again. A message from her grandmother popped up on the screen. "You still standing tall, baby?" Ava smiled, shoulders straightening as the elevator descended. The elevator doors slid shut, sealing out the boardroom's tension. Ava Monroe finally exhaled a long, quiet breath she hadn't realized she was holding. 59 floors of glass and steel stood between her and the city below. But, for once, she didn't feel small. She felt steady. Her phone buzzed again. A flood of emails, messages, notifications, questions from reporters, investors, even employees. The news had spread faster than she expected. Monroe Dynamics now owned a controlling share of Whitmore Technologies. The very people who tried to humiliate her were technically her employees. Still, victory didn't taste like she imagined. It wasn't sweet. It was heavy. When the elevator opened into the lobby, she was met by the quiet murmur of conversations, the smell of espresso from the cafe, the faint echo of city noise slipping in through the revolving doors. People turned as she passed, some pretending not to look, others whispering. Her face had already started trending online, the clip of Carter's remarks looping across social feeds with the caption, "Black CEO shuts down corporate racism." She walked outside into the chill of a late fall afternoon. The wind bit at her face as taxis honked and sirens wailed down Madison Avenue. For a second, she just stood there, letting the noise wash over her. Then she pulled out her phone and hit a contact labeled Mama Jean. The line clicked. "Baby, you sound tired." Her grandmother's voice came warm and rough with age. Ava smiled faintly. "It's been a long day. You win or you learn." Mama Jean asked same question as always. Maybe both, Ava said quietly. "They tried me, though. Right there in front of everyone." "I know, baby. But did you lose your peace? No, ma'am. Then you already won." Ava closed her eyes, feeling the weight ease just a little. Her grandmother always had a way of cutting through the noise. "I didn't yell," she said softly. "Didn't curse. I just took back what was mine." That's the way Mama Jean said. "They don't know how to fight silence. It scares them worse than shouting." Ava chuckled. "You always know what to say." "I just know you," Mama Jean said. "Now go eat something before you pass out trying to save the world." They said goodbye, and Ava slipped her phone into her pocket. Across the street, through the tall windows of a cafe, she caught her reflection. Strong posture, calm eyes, hair slightly undone from the day. She didn't look like someone who'd been humiliated in front of a room full of executives. She looked like someone who'd outgrown the room entirely. Her driver pulled up to the curb, but she didn't get in. Not yet. She turned instead and looked back at the tower she'd just left. From this angle, the 59th floor was a faint glimmer in the clouds. Inside that glass box, she imagined Carter pacing red-faced, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Evelyn probably running damage control lawyers, combing through contracts, the press department drafting statements. The same people who laughed at her would now scramble to work under her name. But Ava didn't smile. She didn't need to, because this wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. The truth that every person watching her story online would recognize you can't shut someone out of a room they already built a door into. Her phone buzzed again. A text from her assistant, press requests coming in nonstop. CNN wants a quote. Should we respond? Ava typed back, not yet. Let them talk. We'll answer when it matters. She finally stepped into the car, sinking into the leather seat. The city blurred past outside the billboards, the lights, the people rushing across crosswalks. Every block looked different now. She thought about the younger version of herself, fresh out of college, working late nights, being talked over in meetings, being mistaken for someone's intern, being told she was so articulate like it was a compliment. Every slight, every moment she bit her tongue instead of speaking had built this exact day. Her phone buzzed again, but she ignored it. Instead, she opened her tablet, pulled up the acquisition dashboard, and stared at the numbers. It wasn't just business. It was symbolic. For every woman who'd ever been talked down to, for every black professional who'd had to work twice as hard for half the credit, this was proof that silence could roar. The car stopped at a light near Bryant Park. Outside, a group of young professionals walked past, laughing, one of them showing something on his phone. Ava recognized the thumbnail instantly her. Standing at that boardroom table, calm and unbothered right before everything flipped. The caption read, "When dignity becomes the loudest voice in the room." The light turned green. She leaned back, eyes closing, the hum of the city soft against the windows. Tomorrow would bring questions, headlines, interviews, maybe even backlash. But tonight, for the first time in years, Ava Monroe allowed herself to rest, because she knew deep down that every story like hers had a ripple. Somewhere, a young black woman sitting in her car after a long shift would see that clip and think, if she can stand there like that, maybe I can too. And that thought alone was worth every scar, every silence, every boardroom battle she'd ever fought. By the next morning, the city was already talking. Every business blog, morning show, and news podcast had the same headline: Black CEO outplays billionaire board, Monroe Dynamics takes full control. The photo beneath it showed Ava Monroe stepping out of Skyline Tower, chin-high sunlight catching the edge of her navy blazer. She hadn't planned for cameras, but somehow they'd found her. That image, poised, unbothered, powerful, had spread faster than any press release ever could. At 7:45 a.m., Ava sat alone in her kitchen in Harlem, still in her sweats, her coffee untouched. Her phone buzzed, non-stop calls from reporters, congratulations from allies, cautious emails from the very people who once underestimated her. She swiped through them all, pausing only when she saw one name: Carter Whitmore. Subject line: "We need to talk." She almost laughed. Before she could reply, another call came through. Evelyn Price. Ava sighed and answered. "Morning, Evelyn." "You really did it," Evelyn said, her voice low, half awe, half disbelief. "The entire board's in chaos. Carter's losing his mind." Ava stirred her coffee. "He'll survive." "You know they're going to spin this right," Evelyn continued. "Make you the villain, the angry black woman who plotted a takeover." Ava's lips curved slightly. "Let them try. The paperwork's clean, the numbers speak for themselves." Evelyn hesitated. "You're not worried I stopped worrying about their comfort a long time ago," Ava said. "Now, I'm just making sure my people get seats at the table." She hung up, the hum of the city outside her window growing louder, the rumble of buses, the chatter from the corner cafe, the rhythm of Harlem waking up. Her assistant, Kira, arrived a few minutes later with a laptop and a stack of documents. "You've got interviews lined up for the rest of the week, and, CNN wants you live at noon." Ava looked up. "CNN. Yeah," Kira said, grinning. "They're calling you the Boardroom Giant Slayer." "It's wild," Ava chuckled, softly shaking her head. "We're not doing hero stories, we're doing truth." Kira nodded. "Got it. Truth sells better anyway." At 11:30 a.m., Ava walked into Monroe Dynamics' downtown office. The air buzzed differently now. Employees stood a little taller, some smiling, some whispering as she passed. For years, they'd watched her fight battles behind closed doors. Now her victory was public. The glass conference room still held the faint scent of cologne and coffee from the night before. She took her usual seat at the head of the table, not the one they'd given her out of courtesy, but the one she'd earned. On the screen, her legal team appeared on a video call, scrolling through documents, confirming the acquisition was airtight. Every line signed, every clause binding. "Congratulations, Ms. Monroe," said her lawyer. "You're officially the majority shareholder of Whitmore Technologies. They can't override you without your vote." Ava nodded, slowly absorbing it. "Good," she said. "Let's make this count." Her eyes drifted toward the skyline again, the same view from the 59th floor, only now it belonged to her. Kira entered quietly with a tablet. "You'll want to see this." It was a video. Someone had leaked security footage from yesterday's meeting. Carter's voice echoed in the background. "This boardroom isn't for assistance." The clip had gone viral overnight, over 8 million views, hundreds of thousands of comments. One pinned comment read, "They tried to humiliate her in front of everyone. She responded with ownership. That's power." Ava set the tablet down, thinking about how fast the story was spreading. How many people were watching not because she was famous, but because she represented something bigger than herself. At noon, she stood before a wall of cameras in a small studio they'd set up downstairs. Lights glared the air thick with heat. The anchor's voice piped through the earpiece. "Ms. Monroe, people are calling this one of the boldest moves in recent business history. What do you say to those who think your takeover was revenge?" Ava smiled calmly. "It's not revenge when you claim what you built. It's restoration." The interviewer paused. Restoration. See, Ava continued for too long. People like me have been told to be grateful just to be in the room. But what happens when the room itself is built on disrespect? You build your own. And when the time comes, you buy theirs. Silence followed, then applause from the small crew behind the cameras. By the time Ava left the studio, her words were already trending. #BuildYourOwnRoom flooded social media. Young entrepreneurs, especially women of color, began sharing their own stories of being dismissed, ignored, talked over, and how they kept building anyway. Outside, the November air bit at her cheeks. Her phone buzzed again, a message from Mama Jean. "You made the news, baby, but don't forget where you came from." Ava typed back, "Never could." As she walked toward her car, a group of young interns from her company passed by wide-eyed. One of them called out nervously, "Ms. Monroe, thank you, for real." Ava smiled, touched the side of her heart, and said, "Don't thank me yet. Just make sure you keep your seat when it's your turn." The interns laughed softly, nodding. She climbed into the car, watching her reflection in the window. Same woman, same city, but a different kind of power now. The kind that didn't shout. The kind that didn't need permission. The kind that owned the room. "Hello, friend. I need your help. The channel's been slowing down, and your one free subscribe can truly keep us going. It costs nothing, but makes a huge difference. Comment where you're watching from so we know our global fam is here. Thank you now. Let's jump back into the story." By Friday morning, the storm had turned global. News anchors couldn't stop repeating her name. Ava Monroe, the woman who bought the boardroom that rejected her. Every business network from CNN to Bloomberg had a segment dissecting her unexpected rise. Some called it a triumph of justice. Others labeled it ruthless ambition. But to Ava, it was neither. It was balance. She sat at her desk overlooking the Hudson River, the morning sun flashing against the glass. Below, traffic pulsed like a heartbeat, the city alive with the noise of ambition. Her assistant Kira hovered near the door, a nervous energy in her voice. "Carter Whitmore's PR team just released a statement," Kira said. "They're claiming you used insider information during the acquisition." Ava didn't flinch. "Of course they are." Kira continued scrolling on her tablet. "They're painting it like a hostile takeover, saying you orchestrated this to humiliate him." Ava leaned back, crossing her legs. "They can't rewrite facts. Numbers don't lie." Kira hesitated. "Still, the press is eating it up? You want me to respond?" Ava looked out at the skyline, eyes calm. "No. Let them talk. The truth doesn't need a press release. The truth, however, needed proof, and Ava had plenty." She opened her laptop, scrolling through files. Everything was documented contracts, timestamps, every digital footprint showing the legality of the merger. For years, Whitmore Technologies had built its empire on silent discrimination, promotions that never came, Partnerships declined for optics, deals sabotaged by whispers. Ava had seen it all. Now for the first time, silence worked in her favor. The intercom buzzed. "Miss Monroe, there's someone here to see you." Ava frowned. "Who?" "Carter Whitmore." The room fell still. Kira's eyes widened. "You want me to tell security?" "No," Ava said quietly. "Let him in." Moments later, the door opened. Carter walked in, looking nothing like the man who'd mocked her days ago. His suit was perfect, but the arrogance was gone. The sharp confidence had been replaced by something smaller, defensive, brittle. "Ava," he began, forcing a polite smile. "I came to clear the air." She gestured toward the chair across from her desk. "You can try." He sat clasping his hands. "Look, things got heated in that meeting. Words were said. Maybe I crossed a line. But you have to understand that deal meant everything to my family." Ava studied him for a moment. "And my dignity meant nothing." He blinked, caught off guard by the directness. "That's not what It's exactly what you meant." Ava cut in, her tone still calm. "You wanted the deal, not the partnership. You wanted control. You saw me as a number, not a name. That's the difference between you and me." He exhaled sharply. "This isn't personal, Ava. It's business." She leaned forward, voice firm. "It became personal the second you decided to humiliate me in front of a room full of executives. You made it personal when you reminded me that power doesn't change perception overnight, and yet here you are, asking the woman you dismissed for mercy." Carter's jaw tightened. "You think this makes you better?" "No," Ava said. "It just makes me done." She opened a folder on her desk and slid a document toward him. "That's your exit agreement. You'll keep your shares. You'll have your legacy, but you won't have my company." He stared at the paper, his face pale. "You're pushing me out. I'm offering you peace," Ava said evenly. "Take it, before your lawyers convince you to fight and lose everything." For a long moment, neither spoke. The city outside hummed softly, the distant rhythm of honking taxis and wind over glass. Finally, Carter stood. "You really think people will side with you?" Ava smiled faintly. "They already did." He left without another word. When the door clicked shut, Kira stepped back in. That felt historic. Ava exhaled, tension slipping from her shoulders. "History's just patterns," she said. "We're the ones who decide when to break them." Later that afternoon, she drove to her old neighborhood in Atlanta. The flight had been quiet, her mind looping through the last 72 hours. The houses looked smaller now, the streets narrower, but the feeling, the hum of community was the same. Kids played basketball on cracked pavement. Old men sat outside the barbershop, arguing over who had the best jump shot in '98. She parked outside a modest brick church, its paint peeling at the edges, and stepped inside. Mama Jean was there, sitting in the second pew, humming softly to herself. When she saw Ava, she smiled so wide it filled the whole room. "Look at you," she said, reaching for her granddaughter's hand. "Whole world talking about you, but you still came home." Ava squeezed her hand. "This is where I learned who I was." "I couldn't forget that." They sat together in silence for a while, the afternoon light spilling through stained glass. Finally, Mama Jean spoke. "You did what you had to do, baby. But remember, don't let the fight harden your heart. Power ain't worth nothing if you lose your peace." Ava nodded, slowly. "I know, Mama. I'm not angry. Just awake." And for the first time all week, she smiled real easy, unguarded, because she finally understood what her grandmother had meant all those years. Sometimes justice isn't loud. It's steady, it's silent, and it always arrives on time. The Sunday sun spilled over Atlanta, turning the red brick houses gold. For the first time in weeks, Ava Monroe wasn't running on adrenaline or headlines. She woke up to quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't ask anything of you, the kind that feels earned. She made coffee, stepped out onto the porch of Mama Jean's house, and watched the neighborhood stir. Kids on bikes, someone blasting old-school R&B from a car stereo, a church bell echoing from down the block. The world kept moving, and she finally had time to just breathe. Her phone buzzed again. It hadn't stopped since the takeover. Mentions, tags, interview requests, investors, podcasters, everyone wanted a piece of the story. But this morning she ignored them all. Instead, she called Mama Jean from the kitchen. "You still making those sweet rolls?" "Already in the oven," her grandmother answered, laughing. "You coming to church or just stealing breakfast?" "Both," Ava said, grinning. She drove to the small church where she'd grown up, the same one that held bake sales baptisms and half the neighborhood's memories. Inside, people turned as she entered. Whispers followed her down the aisle. "That's her. The CEO from TV. Baby done made it all the way to CNN." Ava smiled, shyly, hugging the women who had raised her, the men who used to hand her peppermints after Sunday school. It felt like stepping back in time. After the service, Pastor Raymond called her up. "Sister Monroe," he said with a smile, "the world may know you for that boardroom victory, but we've known you since you were knee-high. Would you bless us with a few words?" Ava hesitated, heart pounding. Speaking in front of cameras was one thing. Speaking here, in front of people who'd known her before success, was another. She stepped up to the pulpit anyway. "Morning, family," she began. The room murmured back warm and familiar. "Y'all been seeing my face a lot lately, huh?" Laughter rippled through the pews. "Let me tell you something," Ava continued. "When they kicked me out of that boardroom, they thought they were protecting power. But what they really did was reveal it, because power doesn't live in a title or a building. It lives in how you carry yourself when someone tells you that you don't belong." A quiet amen floated from the back row. Ava smiled softly. "See, I didn't walk away to make a point. I walked away because I knew who I was before I walked in. And that's what they can't take from you: identity, dignity, peace." Another amen followed, louder this time. "When I was a kid, I used to sit right over there," she said, pointing to the third pew. "And Mama Jean used to whisper, 'Hold your head up, baby. Even when they don't see your worth, you do.' Took me 30 years to really understand that. But now I do." She paused, letting the words sink in. "This ain't about revenge or headlines. It's about every person in this room who's ever been underestimated. You don't have to fight loud. You just have to keep standing." When she stepped down, the congregation rose clapping. Not the wild kind of applause, it was something deeper, like collective pride. Afterward, as the crowd filtered out, Mama Jean hugged her tight. "That's my girl," she whispered. "You turned pain into purpose." Outside, the afternoon sun blazed bright. Ava leaned against her car, scrolling through her phone. Her company's official site had just updated Whitmore Technologies, officially rebranded as Monroe Global. Below the headline was her photo, calm, confident, wearing the same Navy suit from that fateful day. Comments poured in. "She did it for all of us. Black excellence personified. This one's for every time we were told no." She closed the browser, overwhelmed. Just then, a young woman from the church walked up, maybe mid-20s, wearing scrubs and tired eyes. "Ms. Monroe," she asked quietly, "I just wanted to say thank you. I'm starting nursing school next year, and watching you stand your ground reminded me I can stand mine too." Ava's throat tightened. She smiled and reached out, touching the woman's shoulder. "Don't just stand, sweetheart. Build." As the woman walked away, Ava slipped on her sunglasses and looked up at the sky. The world was still loud, chaotic, demanding, relentless, but for the first time she didn't feel small inside it. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her head. "Don't let the fight harden your heart." She wouldn't. She'd let it shape her instead. Back in her car, her phone buzzed again, an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Ms. Monroe," a voice said, "this is the White House Business Council. We'd like to invite you to speak on entrepreneurship and equity next month." Ava blinked, stunned, then laughed softly. Guess the world really is watching. When she hung up, she sat for a long moment, smiling at her reflection in the rearview mirror. A woman once dismissed as the help now invited to help shape the future. That's how power moves. Quietly, steadily, righteously. And as she drove off, the city lights caught her car window, her reflection blending with the skyline she now partly owned, and for the first time, Ava Monroe didn't just feel like she'd won. She felt free. The invitation from the White House changed everything, yet nothing at all. Because even with national headlines calling her a trailblazer, Ava Monroe still woke up every morning and made her own coffee, still took calls from her grandmother, first thing still looked out her window and whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude before stepping into the noise. A week after the church service, she found herself back in Manhattan, this time, not as the outcast in someone else's boardroom, but as the keynote speaker at a business summit filled with the same kind of people who once questioned her worth. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers, the air thick with money and power. But Ava wasn't nervous. She'd already lived this scene once. When she took the stage, the crowd quieted. Cameras flashed. She started with a smile. "A year ago, I was told I didn't belong in a room like this," she said. "Funny thing is, I didn't argue. I just built my own room." A few laughs, a few nods. But then came the silence, the kind of silence that meant people were listening for real. "I didn't buy a company to prove I was better," Ava continued. "I did it to prove we don't have to shrink to fit spaces that were never designed for us. We can lead with grace. We can succeed without becoming the people who tried to break us." She glanced at the first few rows, executives, young founders, students, and a few familiar faces from the old board. Their expressions were unreadable, but their attention was fixed. "I've learned something," she said. "The opposite of hate isn't love, it's understanding. When you understand your own value, no insult can define you and no door can stay closed forever, because you'll find a way to build a new one. And when you do, leave it open behind you." Applause rose slowly, then rolled through the room like thunder. Afterward, in the hallway, a young black woman stopped her breathless. "Miss Monroe, my mom used to tell me about you. I watched that clip of the boardroom like 100 times. It made me believe I could do more than just survive in this world. I could actually win." Ava smiled softly. "Then promise me something," she said. "When you win, don't close the door behind you. Keep it open. Someone else will need the light." The young woman nodded, eyes shining. That night, back at her hotel, Ava stood by the window looking out over the city that once tried to swallow her whole. The skyline sparkled like a sea of second chances. Somewhere out there, another black girl was sitting in a car scrolling through her phone, wondering if she should quit or keep going. Ava hoped she'd find her story first. She picked up her phone, opened her camera, and began to record a short message for her followers. Nothing scripted, just heart. "Hey, y'all," she said softly, eyes steady on the lens. "If you're watching this, remember your worth isn't up for debate. When people tell you that you don't belong, don't argue. Just build. Build with patience, with faith, with pride. Because the moment you stop trying to fit in, you start standing out. And that's when the world has no choice but to notice." She paused, smiled. "If you believe in stories like this, stories about dignity, courage, and power, that moves quiet but strong, subscribe. Stick around. We've got more truth to tell." She hit upload, set the phone down, and watched the city lights flicker below. Somewhere out there, 1,000,000 screens would soon light up with her face, her voice, her message. Not as revenge, not as spectacle, but as proof. Proof that resilience can be louder than hate. Proof that grace can carry more power than greed. Proof that when a black woman walks out of the boardroom, the whole world follows her. And with that thought, Ava Monroe smiled to herself, peaceful, grounded, unstoppable. Because she didn't just own the boardroom anymore, she owned her story. And that was everything. Always, she typed back. Always.